Hey everybody, welcome to the Founders Mentality. This is episode 7, so we've officially safely crossed over into both hands, which is really, really exciting. But what's more exciting than that is the guest that I have for everybody today. This is somebody that I've wanted to have on the podcast ever since I started it. He was one of the first people that I actually reached out to see if he'd be willing to do this with me. And the reason for that is because he's been a very instrumental advisor, whether he knows it or not, to me for probably the last 2 years of my life. So quite a long time. So I'm going to let him introduce himself. Everybody welcome Garrio to the Founders Mentality. Hey, Garrio.
Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind words. Likewise, man. I really do get a lot out of our conversations as well.
Yeah, I always have. I want you to tell everybody about this new venture that you're on right now. What is this new company that you just recently founded?
So I founded Forage back in January.
Yep.
And essentially what we do is we help marketing leaders or business owners structure their marketing activity and align it with their sales function so that they can drive the business results that they're looking for.
Something I'm very passionate about. So this is exciting for me because I'm excited that you've gone down this journey, because I'm already seeing ways that we're going to be able to collaborate in more than just a mentorship way. So this is really, really great, and I'm excited to have you on here. So one of the main reasons, I would say the main reason I wanted to have you on this, and this was before I even knew you were going to be starting your own company, but one thing that I've always just really respected about you is you've kept your finger on the pulse of what is happening in the startup community. So in your background, if people watching this aren't familiar with who you are or what you've done, I think most people know you from the work that you've done with Field Collective, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And being at a co-working environment, I'm a huge proponent of co-working environments, whatever they are, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's WeWork or Field Collective, formerly Coco, whatever it might be, Industrious. Mm-hmm. It's a great place to launch a new business because you're surrounded by incredibly smart people. And that's really where you've been instrumental for me in my growth, is because you have this, you have all this information circling around you in that space and in that role that you were in, that you were able to extract the tidbits that were very helpful for me. So in your work in those spaces, what I wanted to know is, what are some of the commonalities that you were noticing with some of the founders and entrepreneurs and startups that you really kept a close eye on while you were making the decision to make the move yourself?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I'd say it's the growth mindset. Mm-hmm. So always being willing to push the envelope. Yeah. Instead of going, I don't know something, just deconstructing it, figuring out what parts of it are important, and who in the community or in your network would be the best person to dig in and help you solve that challenge. Right. And that's the founders that have been most successful, or that I've been kind of admiring how they've grown, yourself included. Is that growth mindset. Yeah. That's a big one for everyone to pay attention to, I think, right? And I think that growth mindset isn't even, to tie this into your current venture, growth mindset isn't even something that maybe investors look for in entrepreneurs and founders that are starting businesses. A growth mindset is really becoming something that employers are looking for in their employees as well. This is a very important thing, to always be learning, right? And I know you, but even if I didn't know you, just doing a quick scan of your LinkedIn profile, it is very clear that learning is something that is very important to you. So I want to go down this in 2 different ways, actually. I'm going to start by, let's talk about some of the education that you've had over the years. So walk us through that. So in terms of education, I think probably, it's kind of two paths, right? There's the learning about business. Yep. And then there is just learning about the things that impact the parts of business that I enjoy, right? So from what industry I'm interested in going into, which ended up being marketing, it was just the ability to learn from the creative folks in the advertising field, and all the blogs and things that are out there, as well as books. Where things are headed standpoint, really paying attention to the skill sets and the tools that the people who are building these forward-thinking companies are paying attention to or looking for.
Right.
So even if I have no interest in the subject matter itself, at least having a working knowledge about what a successful person or the parts of it that is worth paying attention to consist of.
No, and it's a very smart way to go about things. I think recently I saw a post from Gary V where he was talking about kind of his morning routine. And his morning routine is to go onto the App Store and see what are the popular applications right now. It's the same thing you're saying. It might not be something that Gary himself is actually interested in, but it really helps to paint a picture of what are people interested in right now, what tools are they using right now in their life, and then dissect those a little bit. How could we apply that to what we're doing in our business, right? It's a very important thing to be doing, is just keeping your finger on the pulse. I know you read a lot of books. I know if there's a podcast around, you're probably listening to it. You gifted me a book the other day, which I can't wait to read. Everybody that sees it is like, that's the gospel right there. You have to read that, right? And so, I can't wait to dive into
Thiel,
that. Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm excited about that one. And learning is something that's very important to me as well. I've always had a growth mindset, right? I wouldn't be able to do things like this podcast if I didn't, right? Because you walk in this room and it's a full recording studio, right? With cameras and everything in your face, and everybody's like, well, how did you learn when did you do this? Did you go to school? No, I just learned. I just decided I wanted to do this, and I took it on and I learned it. And I think that's an important skill to have. I think another thing though, that with learning that I've always been very impressed with you is learning for you is definitely not in this vacuum, right? You are learning in collaboration in many cases, and you are a part of a lot of different organizations in Minnesota, or have been a part of them as well in your past. Talk about some of those organizations that you've been involved with and are still involved with, and kind of how that helped you on your journey.
Yeah, so the main ones that I've been a part of for an extended period of time is so AIGA Minnesota, so graphic design. Always paying attention to the people who are creating the artifacts that are needed to tell the stories of these modern companies. They all kind of hang out within that org, so I do pay a lot of attention there. These days, I'm helping the community focus on the business side of creativity. So I recently went back and am chairing kind of a business education initiative that they have going on there. I've been involved with AdFed, which is the Advertising Federation here in town, and as well as SCORE. So SCORE is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And this is one is interesting because I was asked to be a business coach, and I was kind of hesitant because I'm like, I'm not retired. I don't have much to.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to come up for.
Right.
SCORE.
Right. But it turns out that was one of the most instrumental groups to be a part of, and for two reasons. So the first is the stories that these guys have the ability to tell, having been through the trenches, inform a lot of the mistakes that, how to avoid the mistakes that a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, could possibly face, right? So I'm pay a lot of attention to their lived experience and how they made decisions. And these guys have a lot of time, always willing to share advice. Another thing, going back to kind of the growth mindset, they come from different backgrounds, right? So, I'll if I have a managerial finance question, I'll talk to the guy who I trust for managerial finance.
Right.
If I have a question about sales,
Yep.
I would, talk with the woman who I know is the sales leader.
Right.
So that's been, really good from a learning standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
What's also been really good is explaining what I'm doing today.
Yes.
And all the modern tools and technology.
Yep.
If I can't explain it to them, then I don't fully understand it enough myself.
Yes.
So it's an experience of explaining and reframing some of these tools that we use, and for you and I come naturally, right?
Yep.
Explaining why it matters to use them in these ways to someone who didn't grow up with it, right?
Yeah.
And is learning it for the first time.
Yep.
So just as important as a learning mindset, having a beginner's mind and being able to explain it is also really important. And SCORE, has been great in that regard.
No, I love that. It's a very valid point, right? I've had a handful of advisors that have been all across the gamut, right? People that are younger than me, people that are much older than me, being able to learn from their experiences. If you can just figure out how to correlate that to where we are today, you're going to be light years ahead, right? And I think that, for you, and I mean, for many entrepreneurs, but with your new venture is really a testament to one thing that I've always believed, which is if you have a passion for something and you have the abilities in an area, and then at the same time you can find a gap in the marketplace, that's magic right there. That is where you're going to create something that's actually going to resonate, right? Finding that gap in the market, it can sometimes be challenging, right? But sometimes it's just a right place, right time sort of thing. I think you're starting your business at the perfect time. People are talking about the things that are important to you right now, and they're trying to understand them. But for you, when was that light bulb moment that where your passion is in business and in marketing needed to turn into the business that you're creating right now?
Previously at Fueled, I was responsible for marketing operations, right? As well as kind of our technology stack. And, there's only so many weeks. So we, run on traction. So the weekly L10s, you can walk into a leadership team meeting with the number that you're responsible for being off track, right? And, I was responsible for our marketing qualified leads and our sales qualified leads. Okay. And realizing that, thinking about it through the lens of campaigns and marketing tactics and, the latest trend according to Facebook or LinkedIn, independent of our business realities, just wasn't working. So what I ended up having to do was take a step back and say, okay, if I was doing this from scratch without any knowledge of any of this, marketing history that I've had, how would I approach this? Yes. And taking that deconstructing what the outcome was, both from a marketing standpoint, from a sales standpoint, to right side those two numbers, was what the process for doing that is what led to the framework that Forage helps clients with today. Yeah. So and it's a clear need right now. Yeah. So for anyone watching the vlog or listening to the podcast right now, expecting a founder and another founder to have a conversation about founding a business, we're going to go a little off course here. I want to geek out a little bit because this is a shared passion of ours, and I think that this is critically important to businesses right now. There is so much confusion right now, I think, in corporations about what is this sales acceleration, this sales enablement, this marketing business, sales and marketing alignment. What is this? There's just so much confusion. There's so many people with their ideas of what it is. And I don't know if anybody's thrown down the gauntlet and said, this is exactly what it is. You have to do this. But these are critically important things to businesses. Now, I look at it like they are the same thing in my mind for the most part. There's a couple differences in them. So I look at marketing, sales and marketing alignment.
If your organization hasn't been paying attention to the necessity for this, start paying attention, because bringing your sales and marketing teams together and truly just letting them be essentially married or engaged in that business is going to help with your revenue incredibly. I would say that marketing is responsible for more sales than even sales is today, because buyers aren't reaching out to salespeople as early as they used to. Now they're waiting until the stats say 56% of the way down their buyer's journey or through the funnel before they reach out to a salesperson. I would argue that I think that stat's a little low. I think that they're waiting even longer to reach out right now. And I think that stat was published 2 years ago, so I'm sure that it's off at this point. But I look at that as more of a mindset in a company is what marketing is. It's just the understanding that it's important that these two groups are working together and figuring out how we're going to enforce and ensure that they are working together. Sales enablement, in my mind, is more when we're talking about actual software or tools that the teams are actually using on the sales side to enable them to do their jobs better. Now, this is all part of marketing as well, because marketing is going to be a part of this process. Marketing is going to be creating those assets and helping them go in the right direction. But in my mind, that really comes back to the tools in the enablement side, right? And then there's, in the acceleration side. And then there's the enablement portion, sales enablement. And I think that that's kind of that in-between space, in between the philosophy of what this is and the tools that we're using to do it, right? But they're all, in my mind, essentially the same thing, all very important. And I know this is kind of the playground you're playing in, so let's geek out a little. Talk to me about what you're seeing with organizations. Where is the pain point right now for embracing this kind of methodology and ideology in their organization?
Yeah, this is a good way to frame it up, because the challenge that most organizations have is these have always been functional areas or areas of responsibilities with, depending on which organization you're in, if it's a marketing-led organization, marketing's telling sales what to do historically. And if it's a sales-driven organization, sales is just like, make the logo bigger, give it to me, I'll go crush it, right? And what's happening is that approach is, as the buyer becomes more sophisticated, that's no longer good enough on either side, right? Because the cost of doing marketing as more channels become available has skyrocketed over, it started growing like exponentially. And sales, you can't hire top sales folks at scale, right? So crushing quota isn't in and of itself good enough. So you have to have this like alignment, like you mentioned, that allows both of those two to work nicely together. And for the first time, technology is able to make that a possibility.
Absolutely.
Right? So, what I've seen is, and I kind of like to think about this in kind of two ways. Technology enabling on-stage activity and technology enabling off-stage activity. Right? So what that looks like in execution is, on stage would be, your sales team or somebody on your team going out and having an interaction with a customer or someone who could be a customer, right? Either online or offline. And online allows you to do it at scale, right? LinkedIn, for example. And off stage is, as your sales team or your organization from a marketing perspective is out there, telling your brand story. Your employees are enabled to be champions for your product, your services. They just get to focus on that. And on the back end, wherever the customer is dropping into your funnel or your ecosystem, the tools and technologies that you have set up on the back end is letting you know where they are in the process. And as a result, what kind of messaging you need in order to move them from a prospect to a customer to an evangelist. Right? And that has not been possible before. So now that these tools are there to enable that kind of activity, sales reach being one of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. And the mindset of sales is no longer like a dirty word, right? When people say sales, you kind of initially think of a car salesman.
Yes, you do.
Now it's someone who is as invested in your success as a customer by using their product.
This is a big shift that I've been seeing over the last handful of years. I can't honestly remember the last time my title had the word sales in it. We're not calling salespeople anymore. We are strategists, right? Because you're right, sales took on this negative connotation. It took on this car salesman connotation, and people don't want to be sold to because they're self-educating now. They know what they didn't know before. Now they just need you to be a better consultant, a better strategist to align what their challenges are with the products and services that you have, which they're already well aware of. They know what those products and services are.
Right.
They know what their challenges are. They just need you to help them get through that buying funnel better, right? But you said one thing that's a trigger word for me that we're going to have to dive into. We're going to have to dig in a little bit more and geek out, which is we are not just talking about salespeople and marketing teams at all. You mentioned employees. We are absolutely talking about employees. Everyone at an organization is responsible for carrying your brand message forward, is responsible for driving revenue in your organization. These are things that I'm hyper passionate about, and I speak about as whenever I can. Dave Gerhardt from Drift just this morning put up a post which echoes exactly what I've been saying for months now, which is, truly enabling your employees to be seen as thought leaders and work on their personal brand is an incredibly important thing for organizations. It should be something that is encouraged. The best way I've seen for that to be encouraged is for people at the top, people in leadership, to be working on their personal brand themselves, so that everyone working below them understands that not only is this acceptable, but this is an expectation of what we do every single day, right? So, I mean, what have you been seeing as far as any sort of hesitancy with organizations to allow their employees to work on their personal brand?
So there's sort of two challenges that I think organizations, and again, this is coming from leaders that the things that worked in the past.
Yes.
This is different way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
So the first one is our company has a brand narrative that we need to control.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And if as the marketing team you're stifling the creativity or what your employees are saying, that then why even bother as an employee, right?
Yes.
So, I think when you were speaking at Action 19.
Yeah, Jennifer Zick's event.
Yeah, you pointed out if there's a spelling error in, the post.
Right.
Like, marketing shouldn't be jumping down the throat of that employee.
No.
That shouldn't come up in your annual review, right?
No.
You're out there championing this brand because you feel passionate about it.
Yeah.
And then the second one is if they are paying you as an employee, like, what if you leave?
Yeah.
Like, what does that say about our brand?
Right.
And I would say that getting out of that mindset of if you work for us, you only work for us, full stop.
Right.
And switching to, I believe it was Reid Hoffman that had this, I could be wrong, but thinking about your employees as not just employees, but on tours of duty.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're an employee or an employer hiring someone to join your team, they're there to do a specific job.
Yes.
And in that current role, you want to give them all the opportunity to shine and share their passion for your organization and what they do within that role.
Yes.
During that quote unquote tour of duty.
Yeah.
And if the next tour of duty as needs change means they move up in the organization.
Yep.
Or move out of the organization. Yep. Your brand message continues with them.
Absolutely.
And that's a different mindset.
Yeah.
From most executives back in the day.
Right.
And it's changing.
Yeah.
But it's what do they say about change? It's present, just not evenly distributed.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
yeah, I mean, for me, it comes back to, I can't remember if it was Richard Branson or if it was Steve Jobs, but there's the quote out online about, what if we train our people to do all these amazing things and they leave us, right? And the response is, well, what if we don't and they never leave, right?
Yep.
I look at that for personal branding as well. What if we enable our employees to build their personal brand and then they get swiped up because they're doing such a great job? That's a bad thing, I suppose, but at the end of the day, that's far better than them not building their personal brand, them not becoming ambassadors of your brand, them not contributing to the revenue of your organization and hanging out forever and ever. Right? You don't need that right now in this day and age that we're in. So things that I'm very passionate about. I love geeking out with you about this.
I'd add to one thing to what you're saying too. It makes recruiting someone in that next role super easy.
Absolutely, it
because it's no longer, you have sites like Glassdoor. People are now, getting a lot more sophisticated with how they network.
Yes.
So if you have an employee that you have not given the ability to champion your organization's brand or build themselves up, and you and they leave, and you post a job, it's very easy for the person who's coming up, if they're savvy, to find that person and have that conversation over a cup of coffee.
Absolutely.
And you don't want the reputation to be negative when they have that cup of coffee.
Yep. No, absolutely. Garrio, it's been incredible having you on the vlog. I always say I'm going to try to keep this to 25 minutes. We effectively have gone over 30 minutes. So
nice.
I can't do it. And for anyone watching the vlog, I apologize. One of the lights went out on the system. I must not have charged those lights long enough. So if you're watching the video and you notice, hey, why did it all of a sudden get a little darker in there?
Because we were going to go deep is why it went dark.
Technical issues will happen when you're trying to do these things. But regardless, if anybody is looking to connect with you, what is your preferred method of communication?
Well, I would say LinkedIn.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So look up Garrio on LinkedIn. I will tag you in the posts as I put up the vlog onto LinkedIn so that people have a very easy way to connect with you. And really fun update. This will very soon be on iTunes as well. So people will be able to listen to this in podcast form. We're just waiting on the approvals. So that should be happening very soon here. But regardless, thanks everybody for joining us on the 7th episode of The Founder's Mentality. And looking forward to seeing everybody again soon. Talk to you later. Bye. Thanks, Garrio.
Dude, this was awesome, man.